long-term solution.
That's what I want to know. What do you propose that they
Okay.
do?
The long-term, well, it's, one is revenue and one is spending. On the spending side, I think the long-term solution is we've got to cut the spending back. And I think the first part of the spending solution is 2006. What do I mean by 2006? Well, the federal stimulus money that we can still receive for the rest of this year, it has lots of strings, but the big string that's attached basically says if you want to get the federal stimulus money, the state can only cut its level of spending back to where it was spending in 2006. Well, in 2006, we were spending at about $8.3 billion. So we can cut back to 8.3, still get the federal stimulus money for the rest of 2010. And then, once the stimulus money's gone, you could probably cut back to 05's levels or something. 05 was about 7.5. So, you cut the spending back to 8.3, the stimulus money's gone, and then maybe you can cut back even below that. Now that begs the question, can we live on what we lived on in 2006? I think the answer is yes. I think there's a lot of families and small businesses in this state who would love to have the income that they had in 2006. Now, for those parts of state government or local governments, schools and whatever, that have more students or more people in the jail or more, we'll have to figure out how to use $06 to spread it a little bit further and cover maybe 5 or 10% more students or whatever, but we can do that, I think. In the schools, if we had 30 in a class back then, maybe we got to go to 33. Or if we had 25, we got to go to 27 or 8. Or whatever it takes to spread those dollars an extra 5 or 10% further.
Do you ever see consolidating school districts so that you don't have so many?
We need to be looking at that. Unfortunately, the way the state laws are set up, it takes a vote of all of the voters in each school district that's proposed for a consolidation. So if you've got 3 school districts and you wanted to consolidate them into one, all the voters in each of the 3 districts vote. If this one votes yes, and this one votes yes, and this one votes no, it doesn't work. Very difficult to force those consolidations. So probably in the meantime, what we need to do is make sure that school districts are working together, jointly purchasing food service or bus transportation or financial services. Maybe we'll start to have to share one business officer for 2 or 3 districts instead of one for every little district or whatever it might be. But find ways to spread the dollars. Now, I don't think we should be cutting teachers. The year before I was president of the Senate, I was chairman of the Education Committee. I suggested an idea I call priority-based budgeting. If you take all of the money in the K-12 schools and think of it as though it's in one big pot, if I propose that we take the first dollars and put them in our first priority, which I think is teachers. If you took 35% of the total dollars that were going to be in education that year, and you put it in a fund that could only be used for teacher salaries, there would have been enough money in that fund to give every teacher in the state a 30% pay increase and hire enough new teachers to reduce the class sizes by 1/5. And you'd have still had 65% of the money available for all the other things that schools have to pay for. And there are legitimate, important things that you have to pay for in addition to teachers. You've got to have a principal and a secretary and turn the lights on and a nurse and the buses and on and on and on. And yes, we'll probably run out of money at some point, but run out of money on priority 132, not run out of money on priority 1, which is teachers in the classroom.
So what happened?
All the people who got funded from the 65% didn't want any part of that. And they even got the teachers' unions to fight against it, and it didn't go anywhere. If you think about, for example, we spend almost $11 billion a year in the K-12 school system. There's a little over 1 million students in the K-12 school system. That's almost $10,000 per student per year. on average.
You said?
Million students.
Can we do it on 7,000? Can we do the job on 7,000 per student?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe 6,000.
Well, think of, at 10,000, at the current numbers, at almost $10,000 per student per year, a class of 25 students means that somewhere in the system there's $250,000 for that class of 25 students.
That just seems outrageously
It-
high.
And
so
the average teacher in Arizona is making $44,000.
So the
That means
rest
there's
goes to administration.
$206,000 per class, per year, somewhere else in the system.
I think there must be a lot of waste.
Well,
Hey, it's just
I
being
guess
siphoned off
what I
somewhere.
want
I
to
don't
say
know.
is that I think we can find ways to take our $2,006 and find the efficiencies or eliminate the waste or do whatever's necessary and still fund the important things that we need.
Well-
Now, the other part of the solution, there's the spending. We got to cut the spending back. The other part is we got to get our revenue growing again. And the long-term solution there is a four-letter word called jobs. We've got to get the economy regrowing again in Arizona so that people are employed and making money and paying taxes and doing the kinds of things that will help to sustain our revenue. Now, one way you can hope to increase revenue is raise taxes. I'm not a big fan of raising taxes. Because I'm the chief elections officer, I am not taking a position for or against the sales tax election in May because I don't want people thinking that we are playing favorites for or against it. But I've never been one that's been very fond of raising taxes. I think probably the better solution would be to change our tax system so that it smooths out the peaks and the valleys of our economy. Our sales tax in particular, which makes up most of what comes into the general fund, is probably too dependent on big ticket items, new homes and new cars. When the economy's healthy and we're building lots of new homes and people are buying new cars, the money just pours in and everybody wants to spend that plus more. But instead of a tax code that collects $10 billion one year and 7 the next, or total 17, we probably need something that collects 9 and 8. Still 17. It's not a tax decrease or a tax increase. It just kind of smooths it out so that it doesn't go so high in the good years or so low in the bad years. Now, how would you accomplish that? Well, one way would be to maybe lower the sales tax rate, but apply it on more parts of the economy. That might be some services, though, and some things that people get a little scared about taxing.
There's been a whole lot of, not fighting, but basically people are about fed up with, we've gone from taxes to revenue enhancements now.
Yeah.
I mean, get over it,
Yeah.
development fees and people, doing that. And I know there's been a lot of voter stuff where we've gotten it in basically to prevent the legislature from trying, well, we can't keep some of the sweeps and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but that, and then so I hear all the time, well, it's voter protected, we can't do this, so voter protected, we can't do that.
And usually I get a question, how much of the general fund spending is voter protected?
Right.
Some will say it's as much as 2/3, but I believe it's about 1/3. And what do we mean by voter protected? Well, we, the voters of Arizona, have to take some responsibility because on a couple of occasions we have gone to the ballot box and voted to require spending on certain things that may have made sense at the time,
Don't anymore.
but may not now when we've got this situation. For example, in 2000, there was a group that was dissatisfied with the way that Arizona was spending our tobacco settlement payments. The tobacco companies lost the big lawsuits years ago, and they put billions of dollars into a trust fund every year, and each state gets a portion based on population and some other formulas. Arizona's portion is about $75 million a year. They didn't like the way we were spending our $75 million, so they came up with the idea, we'll increase the number of people who qualify for access, and we'll use the $75 million to pay for their expenses. Well, somebody's math was way off. They tripled the number of people that qualified for access. And that many new people not only eats up the $75 million that was provided, but requires an additional $700 million of an